How you doing? This is Coffee Break with Jimmy. You know, I talked a little bit the other day about RFK and Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Secretary of HHS. He was also in the cabinet meeting. I talked about him in the cabinet meeting with President Trump, and all the secretaries, all the members of the cabinet were there. And he spoke to Robert F. Kennedy first, and he wanted to know what was going on. He said something about the poisoned shrimp. I don't recall what country it was from, but it was from, I don't know, somewhere in Europe or something. A shrimp that was sent here, and it was tainted or poisoned or something. Something was wrong with it, so they sent it back. And of course, they didn't distribute it. But he said that maybe it was something to do with the windmills. There was a big talk about the time about the windmills and how the windmills along the ocean has killed whales, and different fisheries have stopped the fisheries from being. And the fishermen are out there, they're trying to do their job, their work, and the windmills are stopping this. Anyway, the whole thing is what they were talking about was things that are happening for health. And so President Trump, I mentioned this. He wanted to know about how he was doing on autism, because that was one of the main things that Bobby Kennedy was talking about when he became the Secretary of HHS. Is how does in the 1970s, when they had 1 out of every 10,000 or so, I think that's what I mentioned, children would get autism, and now it's like 1 out of every 30. Now we can go back and talk about all the different diseases that we've had. I mean, you can use cancer as one that once you got cancer, that was a death sentence, because they didn't know it at the time. But once you open the body up and oxygen, air gets to the cancer, then it multiplies immediately, and it does it fast. And actually what it does, it grows so fast that it actually ends up killing the person. And then they found out that in fact was happening. Whenever they found out someone had cancer, they would open them up, and when they opened them up, and that pretty much was a death sentence then. So they've changed that now. Now they're arthroscopically, in the veins and other channels like that, where they don't open the body to the air. And so more and more people are surviving cancer now than what they did in the past. So that's medicine, okay? Medicine, you can go back to just about any disease, any kind of ailment. Even when they used to talk about old people, when they say, oh, they're just senile. They're getting old, they're just senile. They didn't know that this was the stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, which they didn't even have a title for that at the time. So you can go back to all those different things, and then of course they've had different medications, okay, different remedies to remedy the different diseases that they had, and so they had different stuff that they'd have you take. This kind of leads to what I'm going to talk about next, and it's the vaccines. I can remember probably, I don't know how many times, but now they say a child gets stuck with a needle for a vaccine or some different things and they probably get it done 76 times. I just seen it on the news here yesterday, the day before. Before it's they had to get all the vaccines. Where I can remember when I was a kid, I probably got a half a dozen vaccines, maybe a dozen vaccines, and this was from kindergarten probably to first grade, in that time span, or right before I started kindergarten, I had to have a couple of vaccines. Now this sort of stuff went on for a long time. Then you get more and more vaccines for different ailments, polio, the vaccine for polio, and so on and so forth. That was before my time, actually. But this was something that was done back then. And so now it's just they're finding out more and more stuff, and maybe more and more kids actually had autism, that they didn't diagnose them with that because they didn't know what they had. Maybe they thought they had, like I can remember my nephew when he was a young child. My sister gave him Ritalin because he was always bouncing off the walls. And, well, so they prescribed Ritalin to him to calm him down, to settle his nerves. And it turned out it wasn't a good thing for him to have. It actually hurt him more than it helped him. But so you got different things. That's what they call medicine, right? They call medical practice, right? That's why they do what they call a practice. They find out different stuff and new ways to treat different things. And now Bobby Kennedy, his main thing was to find out about autism, what causes autism. Now he really thinks, and I have to believe him, it's all with your nutrition, the things that you eat, how you, what you eat, and how you treat your body, and so it's all nutritious. It's all nutrition, okay? And I know this because my wife was way ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve. When our kids were young, we're talking, 35, 40 years ago. And my wife is back here having a sneezing fit. I don't know if you can hear it, but she's having a sneezing fit. I have a sneezing fit every once in a while too. It's just maybe the dust in the air. I don't know. But anyway, BHT, red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5. If any foods or anything, and my wife, she's very well read. She reads everything. And we used to go to the grocery store to go grocery shopping. And most people take a half hour to an hour and a half shopping for groceries, okay? It was always a 2 hour or better ordeal for us because my wife read everything. She wanted to know everything that was in the food. She was going to give it to her kids. It was going to be healthy. And so if anything had BHT, red dye number 40 or yellow dye number 5, I believe that's the numbers if I can recall. But so anything that had any kind of additives in it, we didn't buy that stuff. And all of our kids grew up pretty healthy. So I think what she did was a good thing. And of course, my kids, they carry this on, this tradition. And they ask my wife, they still call her to this day to ask them about their kids, the grandkids, and what they need to eat and what kind of nutrition they should have. So my wife has been on top of this for a long time. So following Robert F. Kennedy isn't all that hard. And when he talked, when they had the cabinet meeting, and he talked to President Trump, he does have a bit of a speech impediment. I think everybody knows that. And I don't know what causes that. It's something he had some kind of ailment that he had. It affected his speech, but he still speaks good. He just has a tough time, and sometimes he does have to have a tough time answering something or getting out because it takes him a little bit to get out what he's going to say. Now, they just had a Senate hearing, and they put Robert F. Kennedy. He was on the chopping block. They went after him with everything. They said that he wasn't going to take away vaccines, and there was something that they all agreed upon that the vaccines that went through this warp speed vaccine that President Trump sent through to get through because of COVID-19, it actually saved a lot of lives, and it helped a lot of people. I mean, myself, I got COVID-19. And I got it before we even knew that there was a virus, okay? Because they didn't know that at the time. And the year before, I had gotten pneumonia, okay? So I went to the clinic, and at the clinic, they gave me breathing treatments. They gave me some an antibiotic shot, and they gave me some antibiotics, to take over the course of time, and some steroids. I guess that was to help get rid of the pneumonia. And then 3 days, I was fine. So the following year, and I believe this was 2019, right? And or at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and I got sick again with pneumonia. At least I thought the symptoms were the same. So I went back to the clinic. They said, yes, Jim, you have the same thing. And so they gave me the same stuff, and I figured in a few days I'd be fine. Well, this went on for 3 weeks. I was ill. And finally, after about 3 weeks, I got better. And then it came out. There's this the Wuhan virus that came out of China. They were saying a lot of different things where it was the bats, and it was the caves, and it was the wet market, and it was all different sorts of things. China didn't want to take the blame, of course, of this gated research that our Dr. Fauci was part of, and we found this out later, but he was part of that. And so when this stuff happened, they said, and everybody agrees that if it had been Obama, or if this started with Biden, and Biden did the warp speed on the vaccines, or Biden did this, Obama did this, he would have gotten, he would have got, what do they call that, that award to get you, anyway, I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, we all agreed that he should have got the Nobel Prize for that, Nobel Peace Prize, but he didn't get it, and he didn't get it because he wasn't one of those guys. This is Donald Trump now. Donald Trump, everybody hates it. Not everybody. There's a certain faction of Democrats, the far left. Even more and more Democrats are starting to get on board with Trump now than ever before, because they see what he's doing, especially in the last 7-8 months, in this the first part of his presidency, the things that he's doing. Now, he hasn't gotten a lot of the stuff where he needs to, but he's gotten the prices down. He's got prices down for fuel. He's gotten, to where it's starting to go in that direction, and he's getting things done where most presidents in the first year or two of their presidency, they might have a couple things they're working on, but nothing is done. President Trump's getting a lot of things, especially peace. I mean, come on. Across the world, he stopped different conflicts with different countries. He's still working on the one, of course, he thought was going to be the easiest one, was Ukraine and Russia. But it turns out it's a little more difficult because Putin he lies, okay? And said Trump, and something's going to happen here before long. But getting back to Robert F. Kennedy and what they were doing on the Senate hearing, I'm talking Republicans and Democrats alike. We're just hammering him. And he would say like Elizabeth Warren, you're lying about that. She was saying that you're taking away the vaccines. You said that anybody can have a vaccine if it's out there for everybody wants a vaccine. And Secretary Kennedy said yes, the vaccine is available to everyone. Everyone can have it if they want it. But I'm not going to recommend it. She goes, well, there you go again. You're saying that the vaccine isn't good, and you're not going to recommend it. In some states, probably blue states, if you're saying you're not going to recommend it, well, they're not going to put it out there, and it's not going to be free. He goes, no. And Medicare, Medicaid, he goes, just about everyone can get it for free if they want it. But I'm not going to recommend something that has there's no clinical no clinical background on this that proves it that this is 100%. There's just someone saying this. By them saying that means the vaccine is 100%. And Robert Kennedy isn't going to say that because he doesn't have the clinical background or the backup to where they say this is 100%. And vaccines, they say vaccines take 10 years to where they're good anyway. And this one here, and Trump, it did help a lot of people. But President Trump said, hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and there's some other remedies that they had in the beginning that actually worked. But Big Pharma steps in the way a lot, especially in the vaccines right now. If there's not money for them to be made, well, they don't want no part of it. And the senators and congressmen that they put into place, that they back, there better be something in for Big Pharma there. Because if there's nothing for Big Pharma and they're not going to make any money, well, they're not going to support it. And I think that's why Robert F. Kennedy is just the right guy for the job. Even though President Trump said that he has different ideas, they're a little bit different than some other ideas, but I like what he's doing. And President Trump has got he's 100% backing Robert F. Kennedy for HHS. And I guess today or yesterday, President Trump was even saying the way I understand it, that some of the vaccines, or they're not all 100%. Even some of them are poisonous to some people. Now we go back to the vaccines of back in 2020, 2019, 2020, when and all the they were putting back this warp speed vaccine together. They said a lot of people still died from COVID, even though they had the vaccination. Some say the vaccines actually it killed some people. They had other existing ailments that didn't work with or whatever. But if a person went to the hospital and they got in an accident, or maybe they had cancer or they had some other kind of ailment, if they had COVID, well, then it was automatically COVID. They would just erase the rest of it, and it really didn't matter what else, whatever they had or whatever caused them to go to the hospital. If they had COVID, they died from COVID. So that's why the numbers are so high as far as people dying from COVID. And you have to remember that. I can remember that. I think most people do. So I don't think the numbers are actually accurate. And Robert F. Kennedy even said that he doesn't believe that numbers are accurate as far as that goes. But see, he's telling the truth. He's bringing different stuff out. He said maybe next month, probably next month or the month after, he's going to have some information on autism and what causes autism. And he says it's mainly nutrition. But this is something they've been working on for a long time, and it's gotten worse and worse as time goes on, because now they're finding out different things. This is the medical field. They're going to find out different things, and they're going to address them as they come about, and they're going to work on them as they come about. Just like cancer. Cancer is a death sentence. 30, 40 years ago, you got cancer, you had a death sentence. Now, maybe 1 out of every 5 or 6 people that actually get cancer actually die from cancer. Most of them is cured. Most of them are able to cure it, and that all depends, of course, of what stage it's in. Anyway, when they find it. So, thank you, babe. So that was coffee break, right? Anyway, that was good. It cleared my throat up a little bit. So that's what's going on. And the Senate was really hammering Robert F. Kennedy. But you have to understand, Robert F. Kennedy is a Democrat. And he's in a Republican administration because Trump likes him, and Trump likes what he's doing. He really likes him. And Robert F. Kennedy likes Trump, and they're on the same page on a lot of things. And I'm sure they have some disagreements, but for the most part, they're on the same page. But then you got Democrats that don't like Robert F. Kennedy because they believe he's a traitor. He's a turncoat for the Democratic Party. Even though they kept him out of running for president, I mean, they really kicked him to the curb because they thought Biden was going to be the next president again. And the Republicans, some of the Republicans don't like him because he's a Democrat. So this guy is kind of like, he's a no man's land. But I like him, and I like what he's doing. And I say give him a chance. At least now is transparent. And this whole administration is built on transparency and honesty. And I think Bobby Kennedy is doing the same thing. This is all transparent. I mean, they've had 7 meetings already with the administration, for the cabinet meeting. They had 7 of them already. I mean, in 8 months' time, they've had 7 cabinet meetings. I don't ever recall Biden having one. Maybe he had a meeting or 2 here or there, but nothing like President Trump's doing. And he hears from everybody. I mean, the last cabinet meeting went on for 3.5 hours. And, I was watching Newsmax. I watched Fox News at first, and then I changed over to Newsmax because Fox News had, of course, its programming to go on. And the Newsmax covered it for about an hour and a half. Then after that, you only got bits and pieces of whatever the last part of the cabinet meeting went on. But still, they're talking to all the secretaries. All of them have got input. And they're telling the president what's going on. He gives the secretaries, he gives them a job. This is your job. This is what I want you to do. And then he said, and he has trust in them to where they're going to do the right thing or do the best that they can. But they talk about it. They talk about it. This is all transparency. This is what we want, right? And I think he's going to have autism on its way out. Going to have something that's going to show. Robert F. Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy, is going to show that what autism, what causes it. I really believe he's going to do that. Now this is going to take some time, and this is not something that anybody else that I've heard has worked on this. But there's so many other things. Even like I said, the Senate was just hammering him, just calling him a liar, saying he lied about this. And he goes, no, I'm not lying. And then there's some other senator come out there and say something he's doing. And he goes, well, you're just making that up. I never said that. And I mean, this was like MMA between the senators and Robert F. Kennedy, but he was holding his ground. And I think President Trump liked the idea he was holding his ground because he was transparent. He was telling you the truth. So we're gonna wait and see what happens, but and we're also gonna wait and see what happens if President Trump's gonna go into Chicago or maybe in Los Angeles with the National Guard, because I mean I said on my last podcast, I said, the template has been set. I mean it's been set in Washington. And now if they took the National Guard out of there right now and they just went back to the regular police that's in Washington D.C., some crime I'm sure probably would come back, because right now they're afraid of the National Guard. But I think if you leave them there long enough and they start working this out to where it starts working in a positive way, to where you're getting, I mean, already carjackings is down from, I mean, carjackings are down like 95% or better. Murder is down. I mean, they had 13 days without one murder, which is, I mean, that's not something you really want to talk about because it happens. But in the big cities, this kind of thing happens and it goes on all the time. It happens in Chicago every weekend. So why can't they just say, okay, Mr. President, give us a hand here. Just follow our lead. This is what we need. And the president will send the National Guard, whoever else it needs to send in there to help him out. Because the main thing he wants is safety. And he wants safety in every city, not just the big major cities, every city. Law and order. He is a law and order president. I think we've already figured that out. But so that's another thing that's going on. And there's just so much stuff going on. I don't know how he keeps up with it. I don't know how. And he's on top. When they ask him a question, every time he gets off Marine One or Air Force One, and they got the media out there ready to ask him questions, and he answers all the questions, whether they're on his side or thinking the way he does. I mean, he talks to everybody. He answers all the questions that he's asked. That's transparency. That's what we want. That's what we want out of our president. And I think that's what we got. So let's ride the wave, baby. Baby. We just got to do it. We got to do it. We got the president in place, and he's getting things done, and just to see what happens next. And I'm 100% behind him, 100% behind him, and his cabinet. And I'm 100% behind Robert F. Kennedy too, even though he is a Democrat. I like him. Anyhow, this is Coffee Break with Jimmy. Catch me next time, and please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share. And we'll see you next time on Coffee Break. Thank you.